Several waiters holding submachine guns burst into the room, and a gunfight erupted. John grabbed one attacker with one hand and fired with the other, each shot dropping an enemy. John pinned an attacker down and demanded to know where the drugs were hidden. John followed his eyes to the ceiling, grabbed a submachine gun, and unloaded into it. Jack thought he could finally go home, but John said the mission wasn't over. He'd let the waiter escape on purpose to expose whoever was behind the operation. 2.5 minutes later, the waiter ran out the back door and they followed him in their car. When the guy pulled out a knife, John didn't hesitate and went straight at him. In seconds, the man was on the ground, completely beaten. Jack couldn't believe what he just saw. Then they snuck into the enemy's compound. John led the way, clearing the path ahead. Inside, a group of kids was dancing happily while a crowd watched from the seats like it was a peaceful show. John and Jack walked straight up to the gang boss, sitting in the center, and pressed a gun into his side. They demanded the address of his drug supplier. When he didn't respond, Jack threatened to kill the children. Clearly, some of them were his own kids. The boss had no choice and told them everything. Just as they were about to leave, a group of gang members spotted them. The place was full of props and models that gave them natural cover, turning it into the perfect battlefield. John fired rapidly with a silenced pistol, taking out enemies before they even saw where he was. He kept changing positions like a hunter, luring them into his traps and taking them down one by one. When he ran out of ammo, he picked up their rifles. Jack covered him by drawing fire. John broke through and mowed them down. Afterward, John explained the real mission. These drug dealers were actually terrorists. They sold drugs to raise money, then used it to buy weapons. They were planning a major terrorist attack, and John's job was to stop it. Intel shows their next target is a crowded red light district. John and Jack disguise themselves as junkies and walk in holding bags of powder to get past the guards. John tells Jack to watch a Pakistani man from the window. He is the key player in the drug deal. Soon enough, the Pakistani climbs into a van. John uses satellite tracking and quickly locates the terrorist safe house. They walk straight into the hideout carrying a vase full of drugs. Seeing them about to evacuate, John clips on his rope and jumps off the building. The sudden drop catches them completely off guard. Before they can react, John takes out every single one. John steps out and hears someone escaped, so he runs to the window and spots a getaway car pulling up. He quickly assembles the device. The runners are almost at street level, so John carefully picks up the bomb and waits by the window. The moment they exit the building, he releases it. Then he spots a photo of Jack on the wall in another room, which completely shocks Jack. Just then, a call comes in and John steps aside to answer it. All he hears is crackling static on the line. Years of counterintelligence training tell him the room is bugged with a jamming device. He acts casual, sits down at the table, and jokes around with everyone until another call comes through. That is when the opening scene happens. Susan barely escapes in a car. John memorizes the plate, and the next day while they're discussing Susan's plan, she calls. She calls Jack directly, so the team immediately traces the signal. Surprisingly, Susan apologizes sincerely and says she never wanted to hurt anyone. She is probably planning to leave Paris via the highway when the boss suddenly calls Jack. He asks why Jack isn't picking up the US delegation that just landed, and John realizes immediately that Susan's real target is the delegation, so he rushes to stop her. Jack walks into the bedroom looking for clues in Susan's personal belongings. He finds fabric samples in the closet and newspapers covering foreign leaders' visits. When he sees a blueprint, Jack finally understands her plan. Meanwhile, an agent drives John onto the highway, and they quickly spot the car from last night. John orders the agent to catch up while he readies his weapon. But then, Jack calls frantically and tells John that Susan isn't in that car. John insists he can see her in the passenger seat, but Jack explains it is just a decoy. The real Susan is at the AIDS summit planning to assassinate world leaders and trigger an international crisis. He immediately heads to the summit venue, but even though they've figured out the plan, the terrorists are still preparing to kill the arriving delegates. They're planning to ram an explosive-rigged car into the convoy. And worse, John aims his launcher at the vehicle while the terrorist arms the device. Crisis averted on that end, but Jack runs into trouble trying to enter the venue with his badge. Security says someone claiming to be Jack already used that card and went inside. That is the real reason Susan got close to him. And just as Jack's about to be detained, his boss finally shows up yelling, explains everything, and security lets Jack through. Jack rushes upstairs to stop Susan's next move, but when he enters the hall, Jack grabs a guard's weapon and immediately causes chaos as the crowd scatters. He recognizes Susan by her high heels in the stampede. Realizing she is exposed, Susan pulls off her hat and reveals a bomb vest strapped to her body. Jack tries to talk her down, but he forgets that someone this deeply radicalized won't be swayed by a few words, and as Susan reaches for the trigger, Jack has has no choice but to shoot her. To prevent the explosion, John sprints forward and catches Susan before she hits the ground, and it is finally over. In the end, after a series of dangerous missions, Jack has transformed into a capable agent.